The web of weird connects us all. The world's a strange place, but we're all one big family. You ready to get weird? Hello and welcome to the Web of Weird. My name's Tall Paul and I'm here today with my sister.
Hey, this is Joe.
AKA the Psy Siblings. We're coming at you with our first show today. My sister Joe and I have had a myriad of different paranormal and just strange experiences throughout all our lifetime, and we've always had connected a lot and had a lot of discussions and a lot of exploration because of those discussions. And we just wanted to bring to you a show just to kind of like tell some stories, have a little bit of map making about the world of weird. And I also, it's kind of my mission, always been my mission to normalize the paranormal and UFOs and things of high strangeness, because I think it happens to everybody every day. And that's kind of my vision there for what I'd like to bring in. Joe, how about you?
Well, you're my brother, but you're also like my weirdo soulmate who I talk to about lots of weird stuff in my life. Yeah, I think you and I have, I don't know, we're cut of the same cloth. We grew up together. We both are, I think, had some weird stuff. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe we're, quote, sensitive or something, whatever that means. But,
100%.
Yeah, you've always been my sounding board for weird stuff. And yeah, a lot of my worldview has developed just, I guess, from our conversations over the course of my life. So yeah, I hope our exchanges can just be shared and we can, normalize the weird and talk about stuff. Yeah, that's about all I got. So,
Absolutely.
What's up with you, big brother? How was your week?
My week was pretty good. I've just been doing my work stuff, just healing from an injury still from breaking my toe, and that's actually been going pretty good. Yeah, I did have some strange in my week this week.
Ooh, something strange happened to you this week?
Yeah. Sometimes how people talk about angel numbers, like having a connection with angels and angel numbers.
Yeah.
I've been having the number 111 repeat over and over again this week. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even talking about like on an occasional basis. Like I was making some supplements for myself the other night with my digital skill, and it kept landing on 111, like not just a few times. I'm talking like at least 20 or 30 times when I was doing this for like an hour.
Is your scale broken? I'm just kidding.
No, it's not. It works just fine, but it's just insane. Like, so I must be on the right track with
111.
With my health. Yeah, with my health, I guess now. So.
Yeah, that's my kid's in 11. He's got 111 all up in his world. He's always bringing me 11s. It's kind of crazy. Yep. And then one day I ran his name through the, the secret cipher of the UFOnauts or whatever, right? That whole like cipher software thing that's attached to the Aleister Crowley's
Gematria.
Yeah, but it's like it's Gematria run through, I think, the Book of Life, right? But it's the same.
Oh, the book of the law, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Dang. Okay. Well, I'm butchering that anyway. So I ran his full name, like his first, middle, and last name into the little like phrase. And the number 2, which is an expression of 11, right? Because 1 and 1 is 2. And the second statement that ran out of that software result, the second result was is an 11. Which I thought was really funny. Yes. That it was the second result and it was his name and it was is an 11, and I was like, I know he's an 11.
Yeah.
But it's really weird because if you add up his the day he was born the month he was born and all of the digits in the year he was born, that also adds to an 11. I don't know if I told you that, but anyways, 11's all over the place. So 111, 111 is similar. So anyhow, yeah.
Definitely. That's so cool. I love all that stuff with numerology and synchronicity. It always happens a lot to me. For a while there, I was getting a lot of 444s and 222s, but I've been on 111 now for about 2 weeks.
111, 111. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it was, let's see, nothing really weird really happened this week. I don't think. I got to go up into Hoopa, or near Willow Creek, which is, the heart of Bigfoot land, right? Not really just a hop, skip, and a jump from where the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed. And I got to walk along the side of the road there, and I'm doing a whole bunch of field work out there this season, so that's pretty interesting. So I'll be out in, Sasquatch country. Oh, and also, did you know, just, all of the 0 listeners that we have, but I am a soil scientist by, I guess, professional trade. And the other day, for the very first time, I found out that there is a soil series, which basically, if you think about like a species of plant, you can like classify a plant all the way down to the species, right? This is kind of what this type of soil is. A soil series is like the most specific soil profile description that you can get, right? And we have a soil series here called the Sasquatch series. And I just kind of chuckled to myself because I was like, dude, some NRCS classifying soil scientist out there in the field was giving this series a name, and like that person decided to name it the Sasquatch series. And it just made me giggle. I was like, oh my God, it's everywhere.
That makes me so happy, and that's not really a surprise because like the story of Bigfoot and the amount of Bigfoot sightings in Northern California is just so normal. Like it's a part of the culture.
Oh, it's a ton, but I just have to say that like, a lot of scientists are, they don't believe at all. They're like hardcore materialist, atheist types that really don't believe in any of that, and they write it off as, people having too much to drink. Although I've never hallucinated a giant, hairy hominid creature, no matter how drunk I was. So, just saying. Anyways.
That would be fun, and I haven't either, unfortunately. I mean, it might be kind of fun, but...
It might be kind of fun what?
Hallucinating a giant hairy man. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Sasquatch series, and hopefully I won't run into Sasquatch out there when I am peeing in the woods. Really, that's my nightmare situation, is that I have my butt hanging in the wind. And anyways, I could just use a nice safe roadside sighting where it like bops across the road and like I'm moving in a big pickup truck down the road away or something. I think that's my optimal Sasquatch sighting situation.
From a safe distance, yeah.
Yeah, just like, there it is. It ran across the road undeniably. Maybe it stops to look at me, but then keeps going. And I'm just like, I've had. Anyways.
Well, with your level of, with the amount of experiences that you've had before in your life, like I wouldn't be surprised if Bigfoot comes looking for you and says hi, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had very nice manners with you. So. Yeah,
well, I did have that one peculiar weekend out on the Mattole River last summer. I really don't know. I think we'll have to put the audio in, and maybe we can play the audio. And maybe not this episode, but maybe our next recording, I'll tell you about my weird Bigfoot. Well, I don't know what it was. I can't say for sure that it was Bigfoot, but that audio certainly was interesting, compelling.
Compelling and very eerie, too. Just very eerie, yeah.
Eerie
Freaky,
and
eerie.
Weird and super loud and really... Yeah, I can't even believe I actually caught that on my iPhone. You know, iPhones don't make the best recordings, and I was really surprised I was, with it enough and whatever. So, yeah, we'll have to play that for our 0 listeners next time.
Cool.
So if you make it. What's that?
Oh, if you build it, they will come. Field of Dreams, baseball analogy,
sure.
which I never use. So there you go. Yeah.
If we talk weird, the weirdos will come.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Sweet.
I just wanted to compliment you on your ibex skull on the wall there. That's super cool.
Thank you. The ibex skull came into my possession. I put that up for you, so I'd have an interesting background. But that came into my possession. I got some ibex medicine that crossed my path, and I couldn't say no to taking that cutie patootie home. My husband thought I was a little crazy because he's like, why are you dragging in giant animal skulls? And then I reminded him that he was born in the year of the goat, and that it reminded me of Baphomet. And Baphomet is, he's a Libra, right? Just like you, Paul. And I told him that Baphomet was the original Libra. This was all like me trying to get him to like allow me to keep it and like not make me throw it out in the trash. I was like, he's like, where do you think you're going to put that? I was like, I was obviously going to put it over our bed. And he was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put it out in the studio. He's like, that's a perfect place for it. And then he's like, Baphomet was the original Libra, huh? And I was like, yeah, man, he was all about balance, man. So anyways, yes.
The house above, slow below, yeah.
It does look like Baphomet, doesn't it? The horns of Baphomet? Yeah.
Oh, it totally reminds me of that. That actually reminds me of something I was going to bring up for you, too, like synchronicity-wise. I think it was last night. I was thinking about doing the show with you and how you got in that Baphomet skull. And I was listening to a book on tape about the Sumerian god Enki.
Which one?
Sumerian god apparently what? The Sumerian god Enki.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently the ibex is associated with him, like it's a sacred animal associated with Enki and the Sumerians.
Oh, fascinating.
And it may also be associated. Yeah, it may also be associated with Capricorn too.
Well, the Capricorn is the sea goat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was definitely thinking that this cutie patootie needed a name. I mean, aside from cutie patootie, I don't know if cutie patootie is really the best, most
that works.
capturing of its coolness name. But like, doesn't it need a name? It needs a name. I feel like maybe you can help me name it. Does anything come to you?
Jeff? Probably not Jeff.
No.
I'm not sure. We'll have to think about that one.
We'll have to think about it. Just think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we can call it Bex. Bex the Baphomet.
Bex? Yeah, I like that.
Like Ibex, you know?
Yeah.
Becky.
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 Here you go.
Becky with the good
I
hair.
like that.
Oh, shit. Sorry. Maybe I shouldn't quote Beyonce.
No rules. No rules.
Okay, maybe Becky with the good hair. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So it was St. Patrick's Day. It
was St. Patrick's Day.
Last weekend. And I was talking to my kid, and he told me he built a leprechaun trap out of a cardboard toilet paper tube and some tape and some Lucky Charms and a gold coin, like a gold chocolate coin. And he explained to me that he taped the Lucky Charms on the side of the cardboard tube, and he made a trap door on the top that he placed the gold chocolate coin on. And he put he made a little ladder up the side of the tube. And then he explained that the leprechaun would go up the ladder eating the cereal bait that he put on there. Oh, which, by the way, he didn't know it was called Lucky Charms. He was like, that one cereal, that's got the leprechaun on the box, I don't know what it's called. And I was like laughing to myself because I was like, we've never fed you Lucky Charms in your life. That's why you don't know the name. Which, I mean, whatever. Yeah. Parent brag or whatever. So anyways, he's like, look, I taped this cereal to the side, and then it goes up to the trap door to get the gold coin, and then it drops inside the trap. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's super cool. He's like, yeah. And I put some Lucky Charms in the bottom of the trap, so when it got stuck in there, it would have some snacks to eat. I was like... I thought that was really funny. I was like, oh, it's kind of compassionate. I trapped your ass.
He's a compassionate.
You could have some Lucky Charms. And then he said, yes, and the chocolate gold coin. He can eat the chocolate. I was like, all right, that's good. That's a good trap. Oh, man. And then... So
the compassionate jailer.
Yeah, the compassionate jailer. Absolutely, right. So he also wanted to watch this movie. The neighbor family that lives next door to me, they recommended a St. Patty's Day movie, and I was going to tell you about it because it made me laugh really hard. It's from 1959, and it's called Darby O'Gill and the Little People, and it has Sean Connery in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, dude. It's like a deep cut, right? So it's got Sean Connery, 1959, and a bunch of bad Irish accents. And basically, it's worth a watch, I guess. Oliver really liked it. But what happens I learned a couple of things. One, I learned that, do you know what poachine is?
Poachine?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that before?
No. I don't think so.
Okay, me neither. And I was like, I can't believe I didn't know this. But poachine is like moonshine. It's like Irish moonshine whiskey.
Oh. Yeah, I do know what that is.
Poachine,
yeah, I've
right?
had that before.
Okay, so I learned...
Yeah.
I learned what the Irish word for moonshine was, which I was like, that was worth that whole movie watching it just to learn about poachine. But what happens is there's like the crazy old man who's like the dad of the character, whatever. He's like the dad figure, and he believes in the Fae, and he believes in leprechauns. And he's got all these stories that he like regales his daughter and the townspeople with, and they all just think he's a crazy old man. But he really is having these experiences with the leprechauns, right? And so basically he has a run-in with the king of the leprechauns. And like the best scene in the whole movie was him tricking, spoiler alert from a 1959 movie. I'm going to tell you the best part. But they're like... he's talking to the king of the leprechauns, and he's got this jug of poachine in his barn, and he is getting the king of the leprechauns so drunk that he forgets what time it is because in the daytime he doesn't have his magic powers and he can't like get away from him. Right? So he's going to like nail the king of leprechauns down for some wishes. And in order to do it, he gets the king of the leprechauns super drunk on poachine. So he's like pretending to drink the whiskey and like getting this leprechaun super drunk, which is pretty funny.
Okay.
Which is pretty funny. Because this old man's like sipping it and like pouring it back in the jug and like, yeah, I'm so drunk. And then he gets the king all distracted by having a rhyming contest with him. And they pass these limericks back and forth as they're drinking moonshine in the barn, and they were freaking hilarious. And so I wrote one down because I wanted to tell you it. I wrote a couple of them down because they were really funny. And so one of the ones that King of the Leprechauns sings says like, he goes, "Oh, singing is no sin and drinking's no crime. If you have one drink only, just one at a time."
Yeah, of course.
I like that one a lot. And then they started sort of like bashing on women in this way that was very 1959-ish about how like there was this widow O'Leary and she married McQueen because she wanted her name to rhyme with poachine. That one was pretty funny. And then there was another one that was like, "Oh, I wish I had married to old widow Tummy. She's as ugly as sin, but has beautiful money." And I was like, man, this is rough, dude. These. Anyways, the source of their rhymes were like a lot of like ugly women and women that liked the drink. It was pretty funny. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. Darby O'Gill and the Little People, 1959. Sean Connery has really big black bushy eyebrows like no one's business. Such big eyebrows that guy had. Anyways.
That reminds me a little bit of this. I think it's the Chieftains. They're like an Irish band that used to play a lot of folk music. I think they were playing a Chieftain song on the local radio in Minneapolis. I think it was The Current or something like that. But they had this funny song called The Johnny Jump Up. And I can't remember all of the lyrics, but basically it was about how this guy was wandering home from the pub or something like that late at night, and these fairies invited him to come and drink with them, and he had a fairy drink called the Johnny Jump Up, and it made him fall over and pass out. Basically, it was what I gathered from the song, and actually, it was a very cute song, and I thought it was cool because it had something in there about like somebody getting a drink from the fairies, because that's kind of like a common thing to not to take anything drink-wise from the fairies, but
or
I kind of think it was that guy's...
Do not partake of the
or food.
Right, yeah, because then...
Yeah.
I don't know. Then they have you? I don't know. They can hypnotize you? They can keep you? I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but I just kind of in hindsight, though, I was like, I wonder if that song was more of kind of like an excuse for getting drunk and passing out in the field, like...
It was the fairies that gave me the drink. It was a special, magical, enchanted fairy drink. It wasn't that I just got totally smashed at the bar and passed out in the pasture.
Yeah.
It was totally the fairies. That's pretty funny.
Johnny Jump Up. And there was a drink that people actually drink named after that, and that's when you put a shot of Jameson in your Strongbow cider, or whatever kind of cider you have, but... Today is the spring solstice. I'm sorry, not the spring equinox.
Equinox, that's right, it is. Happy equinox.
Happy equinox.
Yeah. Beginning of spring, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe that's a good time to start a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good time to birth something. That is auspicious.
It is auspicious. Yeah. It's cool.
So do you want to talk a little bit about like some of the weird stuff that's happened to us before, like growing up, that colored our perspective and our paradigm?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a nice...
Sort of what got our attention. so to speak, with the World of Wyrd.
With the World of Wyrd and the paranormal, yeah, I think that's a fun subject. I know. For me, it started off for me when I was really little. I guess I didn't really realize it until I was older, what exactly I was doing. But I used to astral travel when I was like 4 and 5 years old, on quite a regular basis, and I just kind of did it, and it all came about with this little stuffed dog I had named Dugan. I'm pretty sure it was my first stuffed animal from what I remember. I don't know. Mom or Dad could probably tell us different, but I won that dog as like kind of a special prize around Thanksgiving.
He was kind of big, wasn't he? Wasn't he kind of like
he was,
a couple feet tall? Like he was like 3 feet tall kind of stuffed animal?
Yeah, he was really big. So he was pretty much about my size. So he was like the perfect size to cuddle with and go to sleep. And
I remember.
Of course, I got like all kinds of like, of course I got all kinds of like drool and barf on him, and he lost an eye and that kind of stuff. You know, regular kid stuffed animal stuff. But yeah, I actually won that as a prize. Dad and I got into this wishbone contest. He used to have a thing that we would do after Thanksgiving is take the wishbone out of the turkey and pull up. It's kind of like a Y shape, and like you would have one person pull on one end of the Y and the other person pull on the other end of the Y, and whoever got the bigger part won. I won that night, and maybe it's just selective memory, but I'm pretty sure how this went down was that I got that stuffed animal as a prize. So I slept with that dog all the time, and it became a habit that I would actually tell the dog what I wanted to dream about or where I wanted to go. And we just always end up in whatever dream it was that I asked the dog to dream about, or we would go to places I would want to go to. Like, I had lots of like flying dreams. You know how they always equate that kind of stuff with astral travel, all the flying dream stuff, like constant flying dreams. And that became like, that was kind of a regular thing for me for a while there. So just kind of like thinking back on that now, that set me up for realizing that there was a separation between your body and your spirit. So like, I kind of think I was figuring out at a really young age that I am not my body necessarily, that I am a spirit that can travel around and come back into my body. And that's a really big distinction to start making. That for me also kind of got solidified when I was older. I had an out-of-body experience that saved my life. And that one was really shocking in a lot of different ways. But there was kind of a longer story. I'll try to keep it a little short. But basically, I had been doing some crystal scrying in my room one night. I had read about it somewhere before, and also like remember seeing like old movies where there'd be like a lady looking into some Romani kind of lady looking into a crystal ball and reading a person's future. They used to have, I think they might have had one in quite a few black and white movies. I can't remember what exact movies, but I think I got the idea from there and from reading it somewhere else too. But I had gotten these really pretty fluorite crystals from my grandparents' shop in Vancouver, Washington, when I went to visit when I was about 12. And I got blue fluorite, purple fluorite, and a yellow fluorite. And that was my little treasure that I brought back from their antique shop that they used to own out there when they were alive. Got those back to Minnesota, and I decided to have like my little experiment. It's like 12 years old. Gonna do this like mystical experiment. My idea was that I would set up a candle so I kind of like have a flickering flame and peer into these crystals to see if I could see my future or see anything, kind of like the old Romani lady on the black and white movies, and scry like she was scrying. So I set this, basically set this candle up that I'd taken. I knew to like put a candle inside of a glass bottle as kind of a holder because I'd seen my parents do that before, and had that on my carpet, which wasn't very smart. Just put this bottle down, jam the candle in, lit that up. I was just sitting around scrying, or trying to scry, in the dark in my room with my TV on. I had been watching some old black and white shows. I was watching Mr. Ed. There was a Mr. Ed marathon, and that was still on. So I had Mr. Ed on the TV on one side, and just being a weirdo, mystic 12-year-old in another part of the room. I think it must have been the flicker of the light and the low lighting in the room that kind of like put me into the trance and made me fall asleep. So when I fell asleep, I had this dream that I woke up and I was on the ceiling looking down at my body. And when I was looking down at my body, I could see that there are flames that were on the floor, just like burning the carpet, right? And reaching over and like starting part of my bed on fire and stuff like that too.
So scary.
Yeah, but it was me like in my spirit body, like on the ceiling, looking at my physical body almost being set on fire, like a warning or something, right? And it's just like a shot right back into my body, and got up and was like coughing and like trying to put out the fire. And the fire department, well, yeah, I shouted for my dad, and we eventually had the fire department come and all of that, and had to get some of the pets out of the house too. Like,
yeah, and I don't remember I remember this fire, but I don't remember like a smoke detector going off or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know if there was the smoke detector in the basement might have been on a batteries or something like that, because I don't remember any beeping either.
I just remember Mom flying into the room and saying, "Fire, get out of bed, go," like waking me up and smelling smoke or whatever. But
yeah.
I certainly didn't remember a fire, a smoke detector, or an alarm. That's really scary. I didn't know that it was like you were scrying with crystals in the basement. That's kind of like, what do you tell your parents, man? Like, what were you doing? Like, I'm just, scrying with these fluorite crystals. Like, hey.
Yeah, I think I just told them I was like looking at my crystals in this candlelight, something like that. I probably didn't tell them about like trying to read the future, but
right.
But the crazy thing about that is like the details. Like, so I'm above my body on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Looking at my body, looking at the flames. The one detail I forgot to mention there was I could actually see Mr. Ed on TV from my spirit body on the on the frickin' ceiling.
A horse is a horse.
So,
of course. Famous Mr. Ed.
A horse is a horse. Your head's almost on fire. Yeah.
He'll give you the answer that
but yeah,
you
the
endorse.
Details.
You're on fire. Wake up. Wow. Right?
But yeah, once again, that was like another astral body, out of body experience. So that really, really drilled home for me that my body and my spirit are two absolutely separate things. They come together, but your body's a vehicle and your spirit's your spirit, and your body's not really who you are,
Right.
I mean, it kind of is, but
not really.
It's like a car that your spirit gets in and drives around for 80 years,
Just a meat suit, baby. Just a meat suit.
Yeah, sweet meat suit.
Huh.
That's a new song name.
That's interesting. Well,
yeah.
Ollie's learning about some of that astral body stuff. He's a sleep talker.
Cool.
He has tried to sleepwalk a couple times, and I've sort of sat up and pulled the covers back and started to get out of bed one night, and I said, "Where are you going?" And he looked at me, he goes, "I don't know." I said, "Well, why don't you lay back down and go to sleep?" And he goes, "Okay." He just laid back down and went to sleep. And then just a couple nights ago, he sat up and said, "Mom, And then his eyes were open and he was looking right at me, and he started telling me something that he said mom really clearly, so much that I woke up and turned over. I was like, what is going on? And he's like,
okay,
mom, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like Mr. Mumbles. So I couldn't quite understand him. And then I said, what was that? Can you say that again? And then he goes, oh, I forgot. And I'm like, are you asleep? He goes, I think so. And I said, okay, why don't you just go back to sleep then? He goes, okay. And he laid back down and he went to sleep. We have interactions like that quite frequently, like where he'll be talking to me and I'll repeat what he says, and then he'll be like, yeah. And then a lot of times he can't repeat what he said and he says, I forgot. He says that a lot. I forgot. So
yeah, and that's kind of when you know that he's actually like sleep talking, right?
Yeah, that's when I know he's sleep talking. But then just like, I don't know, not too long ago we talked about this, but he was falling asleep and he woke up. He goes, gosh, have you ever had like a dream like where like he's like, I was falling asleep and I was dreaming and my ear itched in real life, like my ear was itching, and I dreamt I was itching my ear, but it wasn't working, and and finally I woke up because I was so bothered that I couldn't scratch my ear that I woke myself up to really scratch my ear. And he's like, have you ever had that happen? And I was like, yeah. And then I told him about your experience with trying to turn the light switch on and not being able to turn the light switch on, and he thought that was funny. And then I told him, I said, sometimes, your body and your spirit are two different things, and they separate, and your spirit is doing one thing, but your body's still there. So maybe your spirit was just trying to, scratch your ear, but it can't because it's just your spirit. And he kind of took that in and was like, yeah, okay. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see where that all goes. But yeah, he definitely,
sure.
He has a lot of weird things. He woke up, it says before we moved into the new part of the house or whatever, and we were in the old bedroom. He sleeps with me a lot because he has nightmares, right? And then he comes in, and then my husband gets kicked out of the bed, and then he crawls in because it's too uncomfortable with the dog and the kid and me and my husband all in the bed. So my husband will just go to the guest bedroom. This is what happens when you're married been together with someone for 20 years. You're just like, man, I'd rather get a good night's sleep than just sleep with you, which I respect. We are all busy. We have busy lives. But anyways, so we were sleeping, and Ollie woke me up because he saw like a little ball of light cruise across our bedroom. And he's like, Mom, I just saw a ball of light. And I was like, what? Really? Tell me. And he goes, it wasn't on the ceiling, and it wasn't from like something outside driving by, like reflecting, He was able to describe all of that. Yeah. He's like, it wasn't from outside. It wasn't from outside, he kept saying. And I said, okay, well, like, how big was it? And, what color was it? He said it was like a white color. And he said it was like a little bit bigger than a marble. And that it shot across the room and out the window. And he described it flying across the room, like not in a straight line. Like it flew, and then it like jogged down, and then jogged back up, and then shot out the window. So it like went down and then up and then out. And so he knew it wasn't just like a straight line reflector across the ceiling. And then I told him, I said, that sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just see like little balls of light, that's a thing, it could have been a fairy or who knows what that was, but, don't worry about it, it's okay. And then, and then a few weeks later, we told my husband about it, and he's just like, wow, really? You saw an orb of light? He's like, why doesn't he's like, why doesn't that stuff ever happen when I'm around? And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know what to tell you, babe. You're the skeptic.
Some people are just more sensitive than other people. Like, I know that Annabelle's probably had quite a few unusual experiences. And I know that I've had unusual experiences with him and you at the same time at the Sundance gatherings in Pine Ridge.
Oh,
Seeing
Annabelle's
some of the
had
things
some
that happened during ceremony.
really interesting experiences that maybe I'll let him tell you about. But the very first,
sure.
I mean, you can call it. I guess you could just call it he passed out and had a dream because he was passed out. But the very first sweat lodge we built with our friends was in the middle of a ring of redwoods. So there's like, redwoods will grow in like circles, like in rings here. And there was like a giant stump that had been removed or something. Like the main tree that was in the middle of this ring had gone. Anyway, so we built the lodge in that ring of trees. And he didn't know, nobody told him anything about like if it gets too hot, you can like put your face down by the earth, and to like cool off a little bit. And so he's just like, I didn't know. I thought yours was supposed to sit there. So I just sat there, right? And it was a very, very, very hot lodge. And he ended up having a situation where he thought he called for the door, like, can you open the door? And then the door had been opened and that he crawled out of the door and was laying on the ground and looking up at the stars. And then he woke up in the lodge.
Whoa, yeah. That is a really good story.
And like, I mean, I probably couldn't tell it as well as he could, but like, I was like, whoa, what was that? And like my friend that was like, singing, like putting the water on the rocks and singing for us and stuff. He was like, yeah, I don't know. He went really far away there for a while, and I was singing to him because I was I didn't know where he was. He was far, far away, and then he came back or whatever. But anyways, yeah. I mean, I guess a skeptic could say he just passed out and had some sort of dream or something. But then I don't know. There was a lot more to it than that, anyways. But yeah, he had a real intense stuff like that happens to him.
Yeah, I think it happens to everybody really, like at some point or another, no matter how skeptic you are, it might get dismissed or like miscategorized or something like that. But I think that everybody does have the same facilities, basically like psychic facilities, spiritual facilities. Mm-hmm. But some of us are just hyper tuned in more than others. But I think it's like just like a natural, normal part of life, those kinds of things just happen, So, and some of us have like categorized it and been through it and kind of know how to work with it a little bit more than others. So,
my godson actually had that same lodge. He had a really weird experience there as well. And I hadn't seen my godson in a long time. Like he was in his early teens or something when I saw him last. And then I saw him at his high school graduation. And then a few years later, he's in a fraternity, right? Like full on Greek fraternity. Like this kid is like in it at the university he goes to. And there's a fraternity moms weekend. Paul, oh God, this is kind of funny because
oh boy,
they invite all of their moms out to and they take them around for the weekend. Like all the frat boys bring their moms, and all the frat moms like party together for the weekend. And his mom couldn't go because she lives near New Orleans, like she lives in Louisiana. And she couldn't go. She was heartbroken because she couldn't go. And she's like, she calls me and she's like, is there any way that you can like drive the like 4 or 5 hours to where, because he went to school in Cali where I am. And like, is there any way you can go to frat mom weekend? And I was like, for you and for him, like, I will do anything, except I will be definitely like the weirdo. Like, I am going to be such the weirdo.
Nice.
And so another good girlfriend of mine who's also known my godson since he was a babe, she lives here too. So, you know, my mommy friend was just like, okay, so you girls are going to go, you're going to represent for me, and you're going to hold it down. I was like, totally. So we drive the like 5 or 6 hours to where his frat house is. And like all his frat brothers are just like, oh my God, who is this? And they kept asking me questions because they knew I worked, they knew I owned a business and that I dealt with cannabis farmers and like doing like, but they didn't understand what I did. So they kept asking me like, what do you do? What do you do? And I was like, oh, I like help people with their sick plants and I help them give the plants food in the right way. And they're just like, oh, whoa, dude. they thought I was really weird and, you know, whatever. So, but when I see my godson, he's like, thanks for coming. This is my stinky frat room. It was so gross. It was so gross. And then, and he's just like, first thing out of his mouth, he's like, are you still friends with that guy who did that sweat lodge? And I was like, yeah, I am. And he's like, so do you remember that night that we did that sweat lodge? And I was like 5. And I said, yeah, I totally remember. And he's like, okay, so I went into the lodge for like the first part, like before it got really, really hot. And I just like sat in there for the first couple of minutes. And then I wanted to leave because it was getting really hot. So I left. But like my mom was still in the lodge and like you were in the house. And I said, yeah, I remember. Because I remember him coming into the house and finding me and hanging out with me while the other people were in the lodge. I couldn't do the lodge that night. Anyways, he said, yeah, when I got out of the lodge and I was standing there in the forest, a huge wolf came out of the forest and stared at me and then turned around and walked away. And I was like, what? He's like, I swear I didn't imagine it. I know that I was like 5 or 6, but this like huge wolf, we don't really have wolves here. Like that's not really like an animal that you see here. And I was like, well, what color was it? You know, he's like, white. I clearly remember this white wolf walking out of the woods. And I just like, to this day, I couldn't explain, are there wolves in those woods, Auntie Joe? And I was like, no. No, there are not. And he's like, what was that? And I was like, I don't know what that was. I mean, what do you think it was? And he's like, I don't know, Auntie Joe, but that was like one of the weirdest experiences of my life. And like, I'll never forget it because I was like just 5 or 6. And like, I just didn't expect that to happen. And I was like, yep. All right. Isn't that crazy? I just couldn't believe it. He's just like, first thing out of his mouth, he's like, Auntie Joe, I haven't seen you in a while, but are you still friends with that crazy guy that gave the sweat lodge? And did you know that this happened? And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, no, but this is like the God Mom download. Okay. Like, let's talk about that random spirit wolf. I don't know. Or maybe just random white wolf that's wandering around the Eureka Arcata redwood forest on the coast. I mean, what?
Yeah, that doesn't sound very likely at all. Yeah.
Yeah, he said it was really big too, but I mean, like, I'm sure any wolf would be big. I mean, he said it was all white too, and coyotes aren't white. There are coyotes around here, I guess, sometimes, but like not usually on the coast, and they aren't white.
Yeah, that sounds like spirit animal or something else that crossed over for a minute and crossed back.
Right.
You know.
But yeah, Annabelle had a really intense experience in that lodge, and then he did too. My god kid did too, and I was just like, wow, dude. That was kind of that was something else I don't know. We put that thing in a really powerful place, though, and we did some powerful stuff. So, I mean, whatever. But yeah, that was weird.
That's a really good story.
I didn't know that happened until I went to frat mom weekend. It was not exactly where I expected to like get a story like that either. Like that's not what I expected. So
right, I love that kind of stuff though when it comes out of nowhere. Like I have people that will tell me things, and I think it's interesting too. Like you already have a really strong connection with him, so I'm sure you feel more comfortable with telling you. But I kind of feel like being a weirdo and having so many different experiences, like people will kind of come up to you and tell you things.
Yeah, like who am I ever going to decompress
like
with about this crazy white wolf I saw? You know, and then like who is he even going to talk about that with? I mean, maybe his mom, you know, because his mom's a total freak.
Yeah, maybe.
She's a total weirdo freak. I mean, in the best way, you know. I mean weirdo freak as a compliment, of course. But
of course.
I mean, like, it's also not your mom, too, you know, because, like, processing stuff with your mom is always, you know, maybe that's not what you want to do as a 20-something-year-old dude. But, yeah, definitely. It's like,
right.
Who are you even going to talk about that with, and who's going to validate that experience? And then you walk into frat mom weekend, and he's just like, first thing I need to get off my chest is this thing that happened to me when I was 5 years old, and you were there, and what the hell was that? And, you know, so I just thought that was...
Yeah.
It is true, though. Yeah, you float into people's world, and they're like, I can tell you this, right? Because you won't think I'm crazy or judge me or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's like you almost like having a bunch of weird experiences and like adapting to them and like doing a lot of navigating around them, integrating them into your life, that it kind of almost like sets off this certain kind of aura that people tend to pick up on subconsciously, and they know they can come over and have a chat about something that they wouldn't talk about with much anybody else.
Totally. So. Yeah. You got like the weird signature on you. Like you're like, yeah.
Yeah. But I love this stuff with the kids though, because like I swear to God, kids are just so open, and I don't really think kids turn off their sensitivity till like right around like 8 or 9 years old maybe, and even then some of them don't entirely turn it off. Like I feel like Oliver is not shutting it off. Like that's probably gonna stay on for him.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I hope. I always ask him about his dreams, and we talk about, you know, he's talked about seeing UFOs. He, you know, he definitely. I mean, he was in a Sasquatch call competition. I mean, what's up?
Yes. As far as I'm concerned, he won. That was great.
I couldn't believe they picked some other kid. I was like, I mean, that's total mom bias right there. But like,
sure, but
his whoop was really a good whoop. He really gave a good whoop. And anyways, whatever. Yep. So he knows how to call in those Sasquatchies, and he tells me about orbs that he sees, and well, he saw some kind of weird UFO when we were driving in the car together up to that cabin for Dad's 80th birthday. Do you remember that?
Sure.
He saw some weird stuff, and it was right near a military base. We were driving through a military base, basically.
Basically, yeah, it was an army base, and I can't remember which army base it was right now off the top of my head. But yeah, I know we both made note of that. It was like, you just saw a UFO in a military base. That's extremely common.
Yeah, and he described it to us. I can't remember exactly what his description was, and you know, I asked him if it had propellers and stuff, or like if it was like a drone, you know, because I was trying to make sure he didn't see like a drone or something, but you know, kind of not. Like when he described it. It wasn't something that sounded much like a drone either. And so it was, yeah, his little description was very compelling. And we were just chatting away in the front seat, like not paying attention. And he was like looking out of the window in the back seat and saw some weird stuff. Like, oh man. Yeah, that was kind of a trip. But yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, as soon as we realized kind of what happened there, we asked him quite a few questions without being like too invasive, you know.
Oh yeah, no, we kind of, yeah.
We got the full rundown.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, we got a better description or whatever, and he just described what he saw. He was chill, but he definitely has nightmares a lot. He has issues with nightmares, and I think you know, you asked, you know, you kind of talked about, you know, what it was in your childhood that made you sort of aware of like the non-material or sort of the weird, the land of the weird, like what made you aware of it. And I have to say that like, I think when I was, you know, about 5, I was just learning how to read. So I was like able to read Dr. Seuss, and I had such bad gory nightmares when I was about that age that I would stay up and I would memorize my Dr. Seuss books, and I have like very distinct memories of memorizing Fox and Socks and not being able to go back to sleep because my nightmares were so bad. And Dad didn't really like me coming in their room, you know. He kind of he'd get grumpy at me and stuff, and so I sort of wore out my welcome going into their bedroom after I'd had nightmares. And so that's why I like reverted to the books, because I wasn't really allowed to go in there because otherwise I would be in trouble, you know. So I just had to sit there and be afraid and read books, and then until I couldn't stay awake anymore. But dreams were so gory.
Sounds terrible.
I know. It was an 80s existence of not a ton of compassion for the kids' experience. Anyways, but
right.
The dreams were so gory, I just don't know where that came from. Like it wasn't anything I'd seen on TV. I mean, I certainly saw my fair share of like inappropriate things, but it was like, you know, Animal House or like Blazing Saddles or something. It wasn't like really disgusting, gory horror films that I was watching or something. But the dreams always had sort of this running theme of like there was somebody that was coming after me and I could never see them, and they were killing all the people around me, and I would like come into the room and there would be these like dead bodies. Like one time it was like this person on a bed that was like disemboweled, and it's really quite graphic. It was gross, and like the entrails were hanging down, all the blood. It was like insane. And then like one time it was like in this parking garage at Southdale, which was like the local mall, and these people were like hanging from the rafters in the parking garage, and they were like super sliced and like executed hanging style. It was just horrible, bloody mess.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't understand where like a 5-year-old brain, like where am I even plugged into that would like get me that kind of imagery. And so that was sort of my, I guess, my foray into like the human mind and the dream space, and just, you know, all the weird stuff that can happen. Like, where did that even come from? Like, I don't know. Some weird entity was beefing up fear in my system to, I don't know. I really don't know what that was. It feels like it was some sort of like entity that liked to feed on fear and like pumping me full of this imagery. It was not good.
Yeah.
It was not good. And then I remembered after having those nightmares for a while, we went to a summer camp at the YMCA in downtown Minneapolis. I don't know if you remember that one summer. And
oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is after I'd been having these nightmares for a while. And then at that summer camp, one of the counselors told the story of Jack the Ripper. Not good. Like, why? Like, I don't know how old I was at that point. I had been having the nightmares for a couple of years. And then I was just like, oh my God, it's true. Like, there is someone out there that does that. Like, that was the first actual, like, real life connection for me, was like Jack the Ripper was like the real life person that was like doing that to people. And I'm like, whatever counselor is out there that told a bunch of kids about Jack the Ripper in the summer of 1985, like, shame on you. that just sort of like made it all worse for me, because there was like, this is a true story because Jack the Ripper was this real person, and it was horrible. It was like, it like re-traumatized me in that way, because I was like, that's exactly, like, it just aligned so much with like what I had been dreaming, and I was like, oh no, it's true. And it was really awful. It was validating in a very awful way, I will say. So that was my entrance into dreamland that wasn't so kind. And then also just like the fascination with like true crime. Maybe that's where I first got the like taste of like true crime and like that serial killer thing, and like that like weird fascination with it / how can I avoid that from ever happening to me thing. Like that anxiety or like hypervigilance that got developed. I don't know if that came from that like nightmare dreamscape place or what, but like, yeah,
really possible. I mean, those are formative years, so that would make sense.
Yeah. So, anyways, I wish mine was like astral traveling with my snuggle buddy Stuffy. Because that sounds way cooler,
I mean, that's
than being chased and looking at butchered people.
Yeah, that sounds scary. And like, I do kind of feel like when you're talking about it, it does sound like it was something else putting ideas into your head, because you don't have any frame of reference for that scale and level and insanity of violence at all when you're that young.
No. And I didn't even have the like vocabulary to like articulate that to like my parents, you know?
Yeah.
Because it was just so freaky and scary. It was just like, I couldn't describe the level of yuck that I was seeing, other than I'm having a bad dream, you know? And then it was like, grumble, grumble, don't wake me up, you know? So I have a real like soft spot for my kiddo, just because like he has nightmares a lot, and I'm always like probing at him, like, what were they? And he tells me about them. Mostly they're like werewolf dreams and just stuff like that. But like, he doesn't have like weird gory stuff. He's got like scary monsters chasing him kind of dreams. So that's pretty norm, I think.
Yeah.
Especially for like, that could be fed by sort of his media consumption of whatever cartoons or movies he's watching. So.
Sure. Or video games or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did traumatize him with the Thriller video, though. I do admit to that parent fail. You know, Liz forced me to watch.
I was traumatized by that video when it first came out.
I was too. And you want to, this is so sad. So when that video first came out, Liz forced me to watch it, and because I didn't want to watch it. Totally mean. And she's like, just watch it. This is
our older sister, Liz, by the way, for
older
everybody.
Sister. She wrenched the remote control out of my hands, and she forced me to watch the Thriller video, and I was so freaking scared the whole time. And because I already was tortured by nightmares and scary dreams, I was very sensitive to scary stuff because of those nightmares. I was like very hypersensitive to any scary stuff, because then it like showed up in my dreams, and I didn't need that. So, but nope, she forced me. I cried, and that traumatized me. The Thriller video. Okay, so like a couple Halloweens ago, like maybe like Oliver was like probably like, I want to say maybe 6 or 7. It's probably like 7, so a couple Halloweens ago. Anyways, we are jamming to a YouTube Halloween playlist because spooky Halloween season, like we love it. It's like our favorite time. We go all out, we decorate, we party, family party style, and like do fun stuff like carve pumpkins. So like I put on a YouTube playlist, right? I just hit, it's like an hour of hot spooky Halloween tunes. I'm like, yay. And the first one is Monster Mash, right? So it's like running the lyrics of Monster Mash across the YouTube viewing screen. So mash, we did the monster mash, we did the mash, right? So I'm like, okay, we're all good. Like, this is just going to stream lyrics. But then the playlist goes to Thriller, and they don't just stream the lyrics to Thriller. They actually play the Thriller video.
Oh, okay.
And they, like, edited it out to, like, like the whole first part where they're, like, walking home from the movie, and then he turns into a werewolf. So like I was doing something and like I didn't get to the YouTube, I didn't get to the iPad in time before he like started transforming into the like the super scary part where he turns into the werewolf. And so I go around the corner and Oliver's like mouth open looking at the iPad like, oh my god, mom, turn it off. And I was like, oh my god, no.
No.
And he has been scared of werewolves ever since. And he tells me, he's like, it was that video, that Thriller video that you showed me. And I was like, I didn't show it to you on purpose. It was in a YouTube playlist. And I didn't get it turned off in time. I didn't think they would play the video. And then I told him about how I was scared of that video and how my big sister forced me to watch it. And it was super scary and I hated it. And he's just like, and then you terrible. Made me watch it. How could you?
Yeah, especially the end of the whole video, because like at the end of the whole video, you think everything's gone back to normal again, and then he kind of turns his head and his eyes turn yellow, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm still evil. I'm just hiding." Like
totally,
like, oh, totally.
That's like the lemon juice in the cut at the end of the video. He's just like holding her, like it's all right, it's just me, and then he's like Thriller eyes. Ugh, horrible. Yeah. The weird parent karma of traumatizing my kid with that video though, after it gave me nightmares and now I've given him nightmares. It's horrible. I felt so bad. I was like, that was such a fail.
Yeah, that was an accident, but
it was an accident. It wasn't on purpose, but it was still it was a notable parent fail. We'll just leave it at that.
So Joe, you gotta tell everybody about your experiences with the Ouija board.
Oh, the Ouija board. Okay, well, another thing that happened when I was pretty young, because I want to say big sister was maybe 15, 16, which means I was like maybe 9 or 10 tops. And big sister made a Ouija board on the back of a big cardboard map of the world. I remember very distinctly there was this big map of the world tacked to this, like mounted on this big piece of cardboard. It was like, gosh, it was probably like 4 feet by 3 feet. It was this giant, huge piece. And on the back of it, she very painstakingly did a alphabet in a circle and a yes and no on either side of the circle of letters on the inside of the circle. And we used a juice glass for a planchette. Do you remember the juice glasses that had like little, I think they were like little roses or some sort of flowers painted on them with like a little vine that like went around? I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so that was our planchette, was like a glass from the cupboard, and she and her friends were doing it, and then because she wanted to keep doing it, she just forced me. She made me her Ouija board partner because is there a theme? I was the little sister who just was like told where to be and what to do, and like it didn't matter if I was scared or not. Just do it. So she just made me do it, which was fine. I didn't really understand.
Yeah.
But it worked. The Ouija board worked really well with her and I, and we asked a lot of questions about, like, you know, boys at her school that she liked, and just different, you know, things that a 15, 16-year-old girl would want to ask. You know, I'd say that, like, we never had a bad experience. I know a lot of people have had bad experiences with Ouija board, but we never did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but we didn't, and that I'm aware of. We had consistent spirits that would come and talk to us during our sessions. Like, they had given themselves names. Don't remember what they were, but they were fairly, like, you know, innocuous, sort of common names, like Stephen, you know, whatever, you know. So
yeah,
we always knew who we were talking to because they would refer to themselves as whatever their name was. And so there was a time where I lost my glasses, and I was like, well, maybe I should just ask the spirits where my glasses are. I can't find them anywhere, you know? And it misspelled apple tree. It was like APLE or APL, something like that. But it was very obviously apple tree. And I was like, oh, the apple tree. And it went to yes. And I said, they're by the apple tree. And it said something like, I think it spelled out under. And I was like, okay, they're under the apple tree. And so the next day I went out and like looked around for my glasses under the apple tree, and I couldn't find them. The apple tree was in our backyard, and I couldn't find them. So I just was just like, I don't know. I just let it go. I always kind of took that stuff with a grain of salt. Like, even, you know, as a kid, I didn't know, you know, what was going to be true or not. And so I just let it go. But then, like, our auntie came to visit maybe like a week or so later. She came to visit, and she was out playing. There was a tree house that was built in that apple tree, and she was playing with her son, who was just maybe a couple years old at that time. And she found my glasses buried in the dirt, sort of like partially, barely sticking out. Like, she saw the frame of them sticking out, and she pulled them out of the dirt. And I remember her coming into the house and being like, are these your glasses? And I was like, yeah, where did you find them? She's like, oh, well, me and Preston were hanging out in the apple tree, you know, playing in the tree house, and I found these in the dirt under the tree. And I was just like, oh, wow. And I just immediately remember thinking, like, dang, like, it's exactly where the board said they would be. So I got kind of into it after that, you know. I was like, how did it know that? And then I got very curious and inquisitive, and I have an analytical my brain wants to analyze things a lot. And so
science brain.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I like being a scientist, because I get to think. Analytical thinking is good for that. But anyhow, I had a sleepover with like a handful of girls, and I think maybe it might have been my birthday party, because I was allowed to have like 4 or 5 girls over to my sleepover. So because that never happened normally.
Yeah.
So we were all partying in the basement.
Right. That sounds more like
that sounds like a birthday party maybe. So we were hanging out in the basement, and I wanted them to do Ouija board with me. And so we pulled it out, and I sort of wanted to make a game out of it, because I was like, wanted to sort of test the board, I guess, test the limits of it. And so we split up into 2 teams, and so there was like 2 or 3 girls on each team. And then I had this like little quartz crystal, and the game was one team would go anywhere in our house, which was a 2-story house. I mean, I don't know how many square feet our house was, but it wasn't small house. It was a pretty big, it was relatively big house, right? anyways, doesn't matter. It was 2 floors. We were in the basement, and then there's the entire upstairs part of the house. And it was like a 3 bedrooms upstairs and a living room and a kitchen, right? And then there was the whole like den basement vibes and whatever. So we split up into teams. One set of girls would go hide the crystal, and then the other team of girls would sit down and do the Ouija board and ask where the crystal was. And then it was like kind of like hide and seek. Like you would go find the crystal based on what the Ouija board told you where it was in the house. And we did this, and we were successful doing it. Like both teams of girls were successful in finding this crystal. You know, I mean, we wouldn't like super hide the crystal, but it would be like on another floor of the house. And I remember very specifically that my team was finding the crystal, and I asked where it was, and it spelled out the word like heart and kitchen. Like, okay. And I knew that there was this like little like wicker, like wooden wicker heart decoration that was like hanging on the wall of our kitchen upstairs. And it said heart and it said kitchen. And I was like, oh, it's got to be in the little heart thing in the kitchen. And so my team abandoned the planchette and went upstairs, because after you got your clue, you would then leave and go and try to find the crystal. And if you couldn't find it, you come back and ask more questions. Anyways, we went upstairs, and I went right to that heart, and like nestled in the like little V-shaped part of where the heart humps come together was the crystal. And I just remember all of those girls just being like, how in the heck is this all? I wonder too, like, I wonder if any of those like 6 girls like remember that. Like, are they walking around at like 40 plus years old being like, dude, that weird sleepover that we were at that like girl's birthday when we were like 10, like she made us play Ouija board hide and go seek. I wish I really wonder if any of them remember that. I remember it though, and I remember it being like working. And I guess I just don't understand, like, people say it's spirits. I think it's got to be more than that, man. Like, our consciousness is kind of plugged into this collective. So like, is our subconscious sort of interacting in some way with that board? There's like,
or like your higher self, or some other part of yourself giving you information,
some other part of your like non-local consciousness sort of plugging in, and like I don't know, I think that there's more to it. And then the other thing that I noticed when we would use the Ouija board is that if you thought something very hard, the board would spell it out. So if you asked a question and then thought of the answer, it would give you that answer. You could almost interfere. Like, you could almost mentally interfere with it. And, if you thought really hard about a word, like, Satan, it would spell it out, and then everyone would get freaked out. And I'm like, is that what people, do? Is that they're so afraid of it and they're thinking of these things, and the board picks it up and spells that out, and they're like, oh my God, it's Satan. I'm like, well, were you thinking that? Like, I definitely think that it could be attached to spirits, or maybe spirits are part of that sort of pool of non-local consciousness stuff that can come through the board, but so are you. Yeah. So maybe it's all just this big hodgepodge of a bunch of non-local consciousness stuff, sort of, making noise.
That's always kind of been my take on it. I kind of always thought that like the talking boards or the Ouija boards kind of got birthed out of spiritualism. So everybody always kind of wanted it to be like a dead relative or something like that was coming through and talking with them, and just having that projection on the whole experience. But I've heard other people's experiences where that probably very well could have been like a disincarnate being or like some kind of opportunist entity that was trying to mess with him. And I also do really think it's kind of like part of ourself, like you said, like your subconscious or some other non-local part of yourself, like a higher self. Definitely think it's a mishmash of all of the above, because y'all didn't have any negative experiences, but I've heard of plenty of people that have, you know.
Right, I know, and I've heard of
yeah,
I've heard of lots of bad things that have happened to people, and weird stuff coming through, and just all of that. But
yeah,
I don't know why we never had anything bad happen. I don't know if it was just our intention, or maybe we had some good protective juju around us. I don't know. We lived in a little like Fey fortress. Our house had so much like fairy energy to it. I always thought, well, maybe
absolutely,
the ecosystem of spirits that sort of existed especially in the basement of our house, because we were like half in a hill and halfway out of a hill.
Yeah.
Our house was built at the base of that really big old oak tree in a hill. I just feel like that was some like fairy knoll or something that our house was like literally dug into. So sometimes I wonder, like, well, maybe the ecosystem of spirits was just like really powerful there, and there wasn't a bunch of like bad stuff. I definitely had fairies, like trickstery stuff happen. We had a lot of like, I know you and I both have had a lot of like just objects that would like apport, like they would disappear, like you just can't find your keys. Yep. And you look everywhere, and then you walk out in the den, and they're like sitting in the middle of the coffee table where there is nothing else, just sitting that, you're like, that I was just here and my keys were not there. And, stuff like that happened.
I had an experience where one of my e-cigarettes went missing, and it had this really shiny metal top to it. And I always remember hearing that fairies are attracted to shiny things like keys and jewelry. Uh-huh. And this e-cigarette that I had was especially shiny. And I did remember hearing, too, that if you ask the fairies politely to please bring your thing back, that they will. So with that idea in my mind, with my e-cigarette, I was like, it had been missing for a couple of weeks, and I thought I was driving myself crazy and just did something dumb with it. And then I kind of remembered the nature of that basement, and I was seeing things flit around, kind of like exactly what Oliver said that he saw with that orb at your place. He used to see stuff like that in the basement all the time. So the thought just came to my head. It was like, maybe it was the fairies. Maybe I'll try that thing where I politely ask for my object back. So I did, and then I ended up finding it in Mom's old foot bath that was like jammed in the top of the shelf in the basement. And I only went up there just to look for something else in specific, and it just had like moved that to try to get to something else. And my e-cigarette was in this foot bath after I'd asked for the fairies to bring it back.
Please.
In the gross foot bath.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. Like, here, yeah, you can have it back. Yeah. I'm going to give it back in the nasty foot bath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got some Fae stuff all over it, man. That's like very good, that's very good Fae trickstery stuff. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of stuff would happen down there, And I always, if I have problems finding stuff, I always ask the fairies to help me bring it back. Like, always. I like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I recently where was it? What was it? It was my wallet, and I dropped it somewhere. I'm trying to remember where it was. But Annabelle witnessed this whole thing go down. And I knew that I had lost it out in the wild, like somewhere out of my house out. It was like out in public somewhere. And I was like, oh no, like I dropped my wallet, and I'm pretty sure I dropped it at this place. And, you know, gosh, I'm forgetting the exact place I dropped it. Dang. But I had basically a colleague of mine found it in the parking lot where I had dropped it, and picked it up and brought it into where they knew I was going to like come next in my work, right? They like swooped it up. They saw it was mine, and they brought it back to me. And I just remember, you know, for about 17 hours, I was panicking because I didn't know where it was, right? Because I lost it at night. I didn't get it back until like the next day. And I was telling Annabelle, I was like, oh my gosh, I lost my wallet. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, well, you know, you're going to have to replace all your stuff. And I was like, I hate replacing all my cards and my license, all of that stuff. I said, I'm just going to ask the fairies. And I said, you know, fairies, I know you didn't take my wallet. Like, I know I lost it somewhere. But can you please help me find it? Because I really don't want to replace everything. And I just like asked them like for their mercy or whatever. And my wallet was returned to me the very next day. I was just like, Annabelle was like, wow, that was a good trick. I was like, because they literally found it on the ground out in a parking lot, and they knew me because I live in such a small dinky rinky town. You know, they knew me, and they knew where I worked. And so they brought it in to where I was. Anyways, yeah, it was very miraculous. Annabelle witnessed that one.
That's so cool.
I was like, I really know it wasn't you guys. But I could really use your support here. So I'm just saying, even when they don't take your stuff, you can still ask them to hook a girl up and be like, come on, hook me up, hook a human up, help me out.
That's kind of like the whole Catholic thing with, was it St. Anthony?
Oh, yeah.
St. Anthony, the finder
saint of lost objects, right?
Totally.
Am I remembering that right?
Yep.
St. Anthony, bring it home, man.
Maybe we can start a new conspiracy theory that St. Anthony was actually a fairy.
Oh, there you go. St. Anthony. No, I'm thinking of St. Francis of Assisi. That was different. He's the one that used to preach to the birds. Yeah. Okay, different saint. I don't know St. Anthony's story.
I don't either, but we can make it up and say he's actually
like lowly Lutheran people that don't know anything about the Catholic saints.
I mean, I know some stuff.
A little bit.
I know Archangel Michael quite well, so.
Oh, but the angels are beyond Catholicism, aren't they? I mean, really?
It's beyond religion. Yeah, to me, it's completely beyond religion.
I think it's beyond religion.
Yeah. I mean, they're all we have the same angels in like Islam and Christianity. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Let's see, what other strange stories do we have here this week? Or just in general? I saw the alien lady the other day in the grocery store. The lady that I think is a mantid being masquerading as a human. I saw her the other day in the grocery store. That reminds me. And I know that she's almost like blind. She's like she's got very bad eyes. And so I ran away, essentially.
Yeah.
I saw her kind of out of the corner of my eye, and then I totally did the just shift my body, and I was finishing paying, and I sort of dodge. I saw the direction that they were going, so I went out the other door, and I was like, I'm out of here. A mantid being can stay away from me. Yeah. Anyways.
It doesn't matter if she goes totally blind because she can just click and echolocate. So.
Oh my God.
Sorry, that's kind of mean, but.
Yeah. We got some characters in this town for sure. But
yeah, let's talk about UFOs. We both have UFO stories too. We can maybe just tell one each before we're done.
Okay. All right, give me a UFO story, bro. What you got for me?
So I'll go with the first one. The first time I saw a UFO was when I was in college. I was probably about like 25 years old. So we're talking like 23 years ago, like right around like 2001 in Boulder, Colorado. Anyhow, yeah, I was going to college and I was at home in my room in the basement writing a paper for college, and just in the zone. You know how when you're in the right zone for writing a paper, you just go with it, and like before you know it, it just all kind of comes out and you've got this awesome paper. So I was in one of those zones, and all of a sudden I just got this feeling like, hey, I should stop and go outside and have a cigarette. And I had these like total cowboy killer French cigarettes. I think there was Gitans or something like that, and they didn't have a filter on them. So I grabbed my pack of Gitans, ran up the steps, ran outside on the patio, and lit up my smoke. Sitting there like looking at the moon. Moon was full, by the way, and it's like looking at the moon. And, oh, yeah, I'm sitting there smoking, and there was another moon right next to the moon. Only it's not fixed, you know. It was like wobbling around awkwardly in the sky, but it was the same color as the moon, that like silvery white. But it was kind of bobbling, you know, moving around kind of funny. And it was just kind of in shock. So sitting there smoking my cigarette and watching it and looking at it, and I felt like there was something else that was noticing me observing it. It kind of felt like there was some kind of subtle two-way thing that was going on. Like I was being observed as I was observing it. And it must have gone on for, gosh, maybe like just a couple of minutes or something like that. But of course, like everything in those kinds of instances, like a minute could feel like 10 minutes because you're kind of like in a weird spot and you're kind of in shock of seeing something that weird. But yeah, I'm just sitting there looking at it. It's wobbling in the sky, and then all of a sudden it goes from being moon-sized to almost immediately shrinking down to a pinhole and disappearing. And
okay,
to me, kind of in hindsight, like looking at that, like that was like something that was probably in the atmosphere that very, very rapidly left the atmosphere and shrunk into nothing right in my line of view. So that's my UFO story. I was interested in the subject before, but let's just say that just exponentially launched my interest in UFOs, and I just never came back from that one. It just total paradigm shift.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thought the interesting thing was the fact that I was right smack in the middle of something, and I got a thought that entered in my head like, why don't you go outside and take a break and smoke a cigarette? And that's not normal. Mm-hmm. I would have finished that paper and then gone upstairs and had a smoke. But there was a suggestion in my mind to go and do that.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
The UFO story I will tell you is one that I actually experienced with Annabelle. And we were on a road trip to come to visit you guys in Minnesota, and I was with him and my boy, and we were traveling sort of north. We were in Idaho. We're in the state of Idaho, and we were north, sort of east, barely east, but just a couple hours from Idaho Falls and Boise. You know, we had come in we were heading from the west to the east, and we came into Idaho, and there are just some like really beautiful hot springs on, I think it's the Paiute River, which is just sort of north of the Interstate 80. You know, like you take a jaunt north of the 80 on about like an hour north of the 80. But yeah, you go north of that interstate about an hour, and the Paiute River, I can't remember if it's the North or South Fork of the Paiute River, is up there, and there's just tons of hot springs and rafting and all kinds of places that you can like raft on the river there. There's hot springs on the side of this like the little highway that runs along the river there. And we went to a place called Kirkham Hot Springs, and Kirkham Falls, I believe, is the name of it. And there's a campground, and you know, we were looking for a place to crash for the night, and yeah, so we were looking for a place to crash, and we rolled into this campground, and we were looking all over for a place to set up our campsite, and there was a campsite by the bathroom left. You know how that is, like when you're the last one there, it's like the campsite by the bathroom is always the last one left. And like we pull up, we're like, well, worst case scenario, we'll sleep by the pooper. And like, of course, I go into this thing like, I don't want this campsite. This campsite sucks because it's by the pooper, and I'm like kind of annoyed by the whole thing. And so we start to sort of like, okay, let's just park and we'll walk around and look at some of these other campsites. And we walked up, and the only campsite in this entire place that has a hot spring at the campsite, it's like literally it's right there. Like you pitch your tent and there is a hot spring right next to the campsite. And it's the only one like that because the rest of the campsites are just normal. And then you've got to hike down the bluff of the river where the hot springs fall into the river, and you can sit in the hot springs basically on these like rock bluffs above the river, and like you get your hot, you get your cold. It's gorgeous, right? But the only campsite that's got the hot spring at the campsite is this one site. And we look at the dates because it's got a little tag and it's on its little clip, and it's reserved, right? And it says it's reserved for the days before we were there, and then it was reserved for the following day. But the one blank day on the reservation tag was that night. And me and Annabelle are like, are we reading this right? Like, it was reserved up until today, and then it's reserved tomorrow, which means it's not reserved today. So we're just like, okay, we're totally reading this right. We're going to take this campsite, and we're doing it. And so, like, we pull in, and we're like, we have the dopest campsite. It's also my birthday, right? Like, it's the day before my birthday, and the following morning was my birthday. So, yeah, there it says right there that you can camp here tonight. So we pitch our tent, we hang out. Little man is like loving it because the hot springs like right. It's very nice when you have like a 6-year-old or whatever, and they're able just to like play in the water next to your campsite, you know. So he's like loving life, you know, and this beautiful ridge with trees. So basically we hang out, we have dinner, and Ollie's like crashed out in the tent because we'd had a very long day, and like we had all had a long day. I was like super dehydrated and like drinking a bunch of Gatorade and stuff. So like I wasn't even in the mood to like drink a beer even, you know, like my head hurt. I just wanted to soak in the hot springs and like rehydrate. So me and Annabelle put the kid to bed, and it's in the middle of the summer, and so it's light very late there, right? So we are laying in the hot spring at like 9:30, and it's still kind of light out, and the ridge on the like southwestern part of the ridge where like the sun is diving below the ridge and it's still very light in the sky. And so we sit in this hot spring from like sundown from the ridge until it gets dark finally, and we're still just sitting there, and finally the night sky has come and the stars are epic, and we're just like totally lamping in this hot spring watching the stars. And over the ridge, over the southwestern ridge, comes this white light over the ridge, right? And at first I think it's a plane because it's, cruising at about the speed that maybe a commercial airliner would be going. But we know, because our dad's an avid airplane person, like blinking red or blinking white light is what you get when you see a plane. And this did not have a blinking white light. It was like a solid white light. And then the other thing, as I start actually watching this thing, is that it's not moving in a straight line. It's like bumbling. That's the best word that I can call it. Yep. It's bumbling. It looks like when I look at microbiology under the microscope and I'm looking at like soil microbes and I see like bacteria that like bumble around, and they kind of like move forward, they move backward, they move sort of like, they look clumsy and kind of like they're bumbling and bouncing about. And then this thing sort of like stops and like bumbles downward and then bumbles backwards and then continues to bumble forwards across the night sky. And I'm staring at this thing, and my husband is like, "Do you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I see that. Do you see that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I see that." And so we watch this thing as it bumbles across the entire horizon from the southwest ridge, kind of diagonally across, and it disappears over the northeast-ish kind of direction, right? So we watch this across an entire horizon, just laying in this hot springs. We're just like, okay, that was weird. I was like, did you see it like move down and backwards? He's like, I absolutely saw that do that a couple of times. I was like, okay, that was very interesting. So my very skeptical husband sat there and watched that whole thing. And then he says to me, and I had this thought too, like, oh, this would be a great time to see a UFO. Like, because you're just laying there watching the stars in a hot spring in Idaho. You're like, this would be a perfect time to see a UFO. And then, like, a UFO comes bumbling.
Sure.
He's like, I just had this thought that, like, it'd be cool if we saw a UFO. And I was like, so did I, babe.
That is so awesome. I can't tell you how many times.
That was kind of funny.
I've that thoughts cross my mind, and then I'll see one.
I know, but then also,
and
I mean,
how many times I've heard that before.
The skeptic in me is also just like, you're also laying there watching the stars, and of course the thought, I want to see, or like, wouldn't it be cool if a UFO? Like, of course you have that thought because you're sitting there stargazing, like, who wouldn't think that, kind of? So I guess I discounted it.
Sure.
I mean, I guess I rationalized it away a little bit, but like, he brought that up. He's like, I just had this thought, like, what if we saw? I was like, so did I. I just had the same thought. And then we both were just like, well, maybe that's because we're just sitting here staring at the stars, and why wouldn't you think what, Anyhow, so then we are continuing to stargaze. This doesn't end here, right? We're continuing to stargaze, right, and we're hanging out. And we can see all kinds of like satellites, all the space junk. We're like, wow, there's so many more satellites. Like when I was a kid stargazing, you'd maybe see like one, and now you just see like tons of them. Like there are so many freaking satellites up there. It's crazy. So me and Annabelle are sort of talking about space junk and how many satellites there are. And we're just sort of staring up, and we happen to be staring at the same part of the sky, which we didn't know. And then I'm watching what I think is a satellite, and then I'm watching what I think is a second satellite. And they look like they're on like kind of similar paths, whatever. And then one I think was actually really a satellite. But as we're watching this one kind of cruise across at like a satellite kind of speed, and it's just a dot like how a satellite would look, it does this thing where it flashes really quickly, like almost like when you see a shooting star flash and then streak across the sky. Like it just flashed in this big release of light, and then it came back down to a dot and then continued traveling. Like it just was traveling in a straight line and then did this big flashy business and then shrunk back down to a satellite-sized dot and kept going. And Annabelle was like, oh my God. And I was like, you saw that? And we were like, what? You saw that? Yeah, you saw that. And Annabelle's like, whoa, man. And this was like maybe 15 minutes after we saw the bumbling one. And like,
right.
And it's like not even midnight. It's like 11:15 or something. I looked at the watch. It's 11 something. I was like trying to ring in my birthday, and I was like, I don't even want to stay up till midnight, babe. I've seen enough UFOs. And he's like, so have I. I'm like, can we just go to bed? He's like, let's just go to bed. Let's go make sure our son is still in the tent. You know, because like Ollie's in the tent like maybe 20 or 30 feet away from us. We're just like, there's too many aliens around. We better check on our son. like this is a lot. 2 UFOs in one night within 20 minutes. We're good. Like let's just go to bed now. And so then we got out of the hot springs and we went to bed. You would think you'd maybe want to like sit up and watch more, but we were like, yeah, no, we're done. Like we're done.
Oh, that's enough.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good. And then the next morning we woke up and continued to go on our merry way on our road trip. But I was so stoked. I was like, man, I'm so glad that happened with you and that you saw both those things with me, because that was not, you know, that was not nothing. He's like, no, that was not nothing. That was, both of those things were very unusual. And I was like, oh God, thank God. Usually I'm the one who experiences this stuff and then tells him about it. And he's just like, maybe it was a satellite, you know. But that time he was like, that wasn't a satellite. That was not a plane. That was definitely not. So, yeah, I felt good about that.
Yeah, because you can tell. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can tell.
And it's always so much better when you see it with somebody else, too, because you're like, yep. Okay, we both know we saw that.
We both know we saw that. We both like, you know, the second one was pretty fast. You know, it was this big flash and sort of like flash and then keep it moving kind of deal. But like that other one was like, we were fully having a conversation about it as we watched it like traverse the horizon between these ridges that we were in and with this river, you know, on these river bluffs and the 2 mountain ridges on either side. Like there was a lot of conversation that like, do you see that? Yes, I see that. Like that's moving backwards now. Now it's moving down and backwards. That doesn't look like a plane. No, it doesn't. That's definitely not a plane. You know, there's a whole conversation, you know, being exchanged while this thing cruised across the horizon or the sky or whatever. So yeah, that was good.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And you know the cool part about the second, it's all really cool, but the second incident where it flashed like that, I just want to bring up that a lot of UFO watchers that'll go out with like their night vision and stuff like that and go and actually like really look for these things like in the desert and stuff like that. They call that powering up. That's kind of like one of the slang terms for it. When it flashes like that.
Powering up?
And, when they flash like that.
Okay. Is that like cowboy up or like, no, I'm just kidding. Cowboy, you know, I'm sorry.
I guess a little bit like that, like the UFO version.
The UFO version of cowboying up? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so there was one point several years ago where I'd heard about people saying like, oh yeah, when we go out on our UFO night watch, sky watch things, we'll see the UFOs and we'll ask them to power up. Like, hey, will you power up for us? And they'll even say it out loud. and the UFOs will flash back at him.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's like an interaction. So I got this idea in my head. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool! I'm gonna try that one time." And I'm not even kidding you. This is when I was living in that house by the Minnehaha Falls. I was out in my backyard one night, just thinking, "Oh, it'd be really cool if I saw a UFO right now." And boop, something just popped right in.
Huh.
And it wasn't super large, but it was bigger than the stars, and it was kind of moving around funny. And I just had that idea from hearing about these people asking it for it to power up, and I was like, just thinking, oh, I gotta ask it. So I asked it. I was like, hey, will you power up? Will you power up for me? And it's like, I almost didn't even finish my sentence, and it flashed.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Back at me. Yeah.
I wonder if it was like, because we kept talking about it being like a satellite. Maybe it was like, I'm not a satellite. Like, boo, psh, give you a little flash. Like, I'm not.
Oh, sure.
'Cause we kept talking about all the space junk, and like, I was thinking about how I'm like, oh, look, there's another satellite. And then it was like, I'm not a satellite. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally possible.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's very funny.
Yeah, I love this stuff.
Power up. That just sounds super cheesy. Like, I'm sorry.
Doesn't it?
It does. I'm sorry. You power up, man. Reminds
But
me
that's
of like
what they
Power Rangers.
that's what they do.
I know. But yeah. Those ESETI folks, they're little. Oh, what's that guy's name? Dr. Stephen Greer or whatever?
Oh, he's CSETI.
What is it? ESETI?
He's CSETI. ESETI is James Gilliland with the UFO ranch in
there's a
Washington.
CSETI and an ESETI?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
And then there's just SETI.
Oh my God. F all of that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just like, I'm sure everybody's doing great research, guys, but that's just, and it all rhymes with Yeti. Yes, it does. I don't know. My jury is out on that Dr. Stephen Greer dude. I don't know if I like him or I want to punch him, quite honestly. I know that sounds really bad, but just like, I don't know, man.
I get you. You got to take him with a grain of salt. I can't believe, just like anybody else in the community, like, you hear him out, and always keep a squinty eye. There's nothing wrong with that. Always keep a squinty eye. You got to.
Squinty eye. Yeah, I give him side eye. He's got major side eye from me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was some good UFO stuff, though. I appreciate those stories.
Well, we can.
I think
we can wrap up.
Are we wrapping up? I think I'm done.
Well, thanks for listening to all of our weird and fun stories today, and I hope everybody enjoyed listening to them as much as we enjoyed telling them.
Hope you guys all have a really weird week.
Yes.
And
have a weird week. Stay
spring.
weird. Okay, bye.
That's all I got. Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye.